We've all been to pandemic school for the last several years, and I want to use the few minutes I have to explore what we have learned. Dr. Fauci, whether you ask for it or not, you've sort of been the government's face on a response to the pandemic. Looking back, and I recognize that hindsight is crystal clear, but looking back, do you think it was worth it? Do you think the benefits were greater than the costs of closing down our elementary and secondary schools?
I think that's very difficult to give a definitive answer to that. I know in the very beginning, when we had really no other protection prior to vaccinations that were available to contain somewhat the spread of the virus, one of the things that was felt to be important would be to protect children as well as the rest of the population. Right now, we have felt more than just recently that it's very important to keep the children in school for the simple reason that we know of the deleterious effects, both psychologically, mentally, and developmentally in children, to keep them out of school. But you have to have a delicate balance between protecting the children from getting infected and perhaps bringing it.
Did we strike the proper balance?
You know, I believe that we have. It's very tough to tell. I think only time will tell whether that's the case, because there is indication that has been deleterious effects on children. But we believe from a public health standpoint that at the time it was the right decision.
Well, can I ask you this, Doctor? And I realize I'm not saying or offering a judgment on what was done at the time. I'm asking what we've learned. Let's suppose we had a substantial increase in prevalence of the coronavirus next week, God forbid.
Right.
Would CDC recommend shutting down the elementary and secondary schools?
It's very difficult for me to speak for the CDC, but knowing the fact that
Would you recommend it?
Right now, I would do everything we can to keep the children in school and not shut down the school. And that has always been my strong recommendation, to the extent possible, not to keep the children out of school,
but
to keep them safely in school by getting children that are available to be vaccinated, right, to get the children who are eligible to be boosted, vaccinated, and to surround the children with teachers and personnel in the school who are vaccinated. That is the best way to protect the children while keeping them in school.
Okay. Let me ask you this. In hindsight, knowing what you know now, had you known it then, did we do the right thing in shutting down society? Would we have been better off saying, no, we're going to protect the vulnerable, the elderly, the people who are immunocompromised, and we're going to isolate them, but have the rest of American society, churches, businesses, universities, schools, go on about their business, while at the same time providing them guidance about how to protect themselves?
Well, it's a complicated question. I'll try and give as simple an answer as possible. I think there's a misperception about who the vulnerable are. There are many, many more vulnerables in society, and there's a misperception that the only vulnerables...
But I'm about to run out of time. Let's assume that we can agree on a definition.
I don't think you can. I think that society is very heterogeneous, and it isn't a question of shutting down completely, Senator, because we never shut down completely. If you do shut down a society, you do it for a purpose. And the purpose is at that period of time when you're protecting people from interaction, that you get as many people vaccinated as you possibly can.
Let me stop.
To shut down.
I'm going to run out of time. Let me ask you one last
Sure.
question. What would you do differently today
Right now, I would hope that we would get many more people vaccinated.
No, but what would you do when you did it, in hindsight, if you knew then what you know today?
It depends on when we got the vaccine. Do you mean before the availability of vaccine? Before the ability of vaccine, when we had no other situation, I would try to protect people by making sure that they masked and they kept themselves separated from this congregate indoor settings. That's what I would do in the absence of a vaccine. But right now, I think it's important looking forward. We still only have 66% of the total population vaccinated, and less than half of those are boosted. I think we can approach what we are likely going to be seeing now with an increase in surges, with the possibility of a surge in the fall and winter. One of the real things we can all do as a nation is pull together and try to get our people vaccinated, and those who are eligible to be boosted. That would solve a lot of the problems that you're referring to.
Did the Biden administration ask any of you whether it was safe to rescind Title 42?
We've had no discussions about that, sir.
You haven't, Dr.
I have not, no.
How about you, Dr. Fauci?
No, I have not.
How about you, Dr. Gibbons?
No, sir.
How about you, Dr. Gordon?
No.
Dr. Hodes?
No, sir.
Dr. Volkow? Well, the Biden administration says it's safe, that under the science, it's okay. Who did the administration rely on to suggest that rescinding Title 42 is in the interest of public safety?
That was a CDC decision. The Title 42 is a CDC decision.
Do you agree with it, Dr. Fauci?
Well, I think that the immigration policy should be separated from the public
and
health.
I don't want to get you involved in immigration policy, but people are people. Physiology is physiology.
Right.
And one's susceptibility to the virus has nothing to do
Right.
with their country of origin or their immigration status.
Right.
And what I'm asking you, purely from a public safety standpoint, is it safe to rescind Title 42?
Yeah, I think given the level of infection at the time, which is right now, that I think that the CDC decision was a reasonable decision.
Does anybody disagree with that? Do you all agree with that? Let me get you a record. Dr. Gibbons?
Yes.
I concur with Dr. Fauci on that.
Dr. Gordon?
I don't have the expertise to concur or not concur.
Okay. Dr. Hodes?
I would also say I don't have the expertise to weigh in on this.
Dr. Volkow?
I don't have the expertise.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.